We all know the good old days of Call of Duty. It's often the benchmark a lot of people look to when comparing the newer games to maybe this legacy that the older games had back in the day. We all know the team deathmatches, the search and destroys, the domination games. That is what made Call of Duty so popular back when online gaming was just reaching its height in popularity. And while everyone else was playing games and having great sportsmanship in the lobby chats, I often found myself taking a break and jumping in private matches to play some game types that were maybe a little less traditional than the types of games that were so popular back in the day. And not a lot of people probably remember all of these game types, and we actually jumped back into the older Call of Duties just to relive and play some of these old forgotten game types once again, and they live up to the good memory that I had all those years ago. Now, I've said it before, Call of Duty World at War is easily my favorite Call of Duty game, and I have the most experiences playing these game types in Call of Duty World at War, though a lot of these game types stem from Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, so some of y'all might remember that, and they also continued on through the years in Modern Warfare 2 and Black Ops, and all the way probably into the later Call of Duties as well. But the World at War experience, in my opinion, was the pinnacle of experiences when it came to these custom game types that were so awesome back in the day. First, this is one you've probably heard about. You might have even played a Halo version of it, but the Halo version is really inspired by the game type that came out of Call of Duty, which probably was inspired by a game type that came from some other game. I don't know the whole history of it, but I do have to say, World at War, Michael Myers was so much fun. Now, this game ultimately was a big game of hide and seek, where one player has to run around the map looking for all the other players who are not allowed to shoot and have to hide in a spot. The objective is to not get found and stabbed by the Michael Myers character, and ultimately it turns into a huge game of hide and go seek. Now, there was different versions and variations of how people played this game back in the day. We always played it with the rule where last person left alive can stab Michael Myers, and we also had other little stipulations like you can get kills with the specialty grenades if you get an impact headshot, and we even played rounds with multiple lives if we had small lobbies. But there was something really special about doing this in Call of Duty World at War, and it's mostly because of just the way that the levels were designed. There was a really damp coloration that went into World at War, but even more so over other games in the Call of Duty franchise, World at War had a lot of very natural looking locations and levels, whereas in other games you might be in a city or a building. World at War had a lot of areas that had open fields and grass and trees and other types of rocks and water that you could blend in with while you're trying to hide. You could hide in a building, but you just had a bigger variety of places that you could try to hide and take cover in. Tie that to the fact that you had some pretty decent camouflage, and there's moments where your heart is actually racing as you hear Michael Myers' feet just walking past you. You're not sure if he actually sees you or not, and then that moment where he passes by and you realize that you somehow just got missed. It's really, really exciting. Now, I will be fair, I've played my share of Michael Myers games in COD 4 also back in the day, and a lot of people played with old school settings that gave them the ability to kind of jump into special areas you couldn't jump in the regular multiplayer, which led to a lot of people glitching out of the map. So it actually made Michael Myers in COD 4 this much larger experience because you had to know all of the glitches to really survive if you wanted to make it the distance. And Modern Warfare 2 did some fun things too, because kind of added in throwing knives to that game, which just led to a lot of other types of crazy games that people would play. But still, I gotta say, World at War just has some of the coolest and most unique level designs, and with this World War II aesthetic and the grays and the greens and the colors that they chose for the palette of this game, it just makes the whole hide and go seek experience so much more grand. And I'm probably looking at that with a pretty heavy nostalgia perspective, but you know what? I'm just gonna own it here and acknowledge it. Then on the other hand, there was this other game that most of you probably haven't played, but I actually played it quite a bit back in the day, and it was really, really fun. Now, this game type was called Border Patrol, and it was played in the search and destroy game type on the level CeeLo. Essentially, two players who are the defending players have to make their way up the water tower, while the other two players who are the attackers have to make their way over to Bomb A, which essentially is inside of a house behind the water tower. Now, there's different ways you can travel to get to the house behind the water tower, but essentially you're not allowed to shoot at the snipers up in the water tower until you are inside of the house, which means it is up to the people up in the water tower to catch the glimpses of the attackers while they're trying to make their way and run their way to the house house before they can get there and start fighting back. This one's really fun because it's a pretty heavy stealth game, as the attackers have to make sure that they're sneaking around carefully enough that they don't get spotted by the snipers, and they also have to make sure that when they're making a dash for it through a gap or an opening where they're going to be visible, that they're timing it out just right. And then even if you do make your way all the way to the house, you're still up for another challenge, as then it becomes this cat and mouse sniping battle where you have to kind of pop your head out to snipe up at the water tower, and the people up at the water tower equally are trying to scan through the possible windows that you could be inside sniping back at to take you out before you can kill them. This game type was hugely underrated back in the day, and it made iterations in other Call of Duty games as well, coming from COD 4, it was in Modern Warfare 2 as well, but this one was so awesome, and it's still fun to play all these years later. We got our group together and we played this for quite some time. It got toxic at times, but it was really fun. And then this is a custom game that most of you probably experienced, especially if you're big in Modern Warfare 2, but you know what? It works in World at War 2. It's a little bit dumber, but you know what? It still works. But if you're a fan of quickscoping and no-scoping, World at War quickscoping, no-scoping was one of my favorite things to just mess around and do, because it was fast-paced enough, it was random enough, and it was kind of fun when you pull off a shot you didn't think you were actually going to be able to make. But yeah, this was a game type that, you know, spanned more than just one single Call of Duty game. I remember really playing it in Modern Warfare 3 even, and we even added the stipulation later on that you have to trick shot for your last kill for it to be an actual win against everyone else. It just led to a bunch of people spinning around in circles, and we brought that back, of course, when we were playing World at War. Even though there's no final kill cam in World at War, that wasn't invented yet until Modern Warfare 2, it was really fun to just run around and try to get some no scopes or quick scopes. Now, oddly enough, there's moments where you get really frustrated because even though it looks like there's nothing blocking you and the person you're shooting at, you'll still somehow miss. It leads to some pretty funny moments along the way. But yeah, like I said, when you land that shot from across the map, it's really, really satisfying and really awesome at the same time. Okay, then I was unsure if I even wanted to talk about this last one because it's not really a game type per se, but it definitely was something I'd spent a ton of time doing, and it's still something I occasionally go back to today. I'm not too sure if a lot of people are like this who are fans of the older Call of Duty games, but just general map exploration. This is something that was so much fun, especially because of us being fans of the Michael Myers game type, but also just out of interest out of this game that we've been playing for so much time. And along the way, when looking for hiding spots, even if they're not that practical for a real hiding spot for a faster paced game like Michael Myers, I know for a fact I've spent hours upon hours just picking apart different hiding spots and things that were out there in Call of Duty World at War. There's glitches that used to be so prevalent where you could just fly out of the map and then slowly they would get patched out of the game, but there was also other really interesting things you can do, like this spot on Airfield where you just hide and get outside of the map, but then once you're up there, you literally can't do anything. You're stuck there. You can't get out. You do have a little site to snipe out of, and not a lot of people will expect you to be there, but it was kind of funny because I felt like I was so close to breaking out of the map just to, you know, not at all break out of the map. This one some people did do in Michael Myers, but it was also just fun to do in regular matchmaking or just in general whenever you're just practicing things. But getting on top of the building on Castle was something a lot of people would try to do as well. Some were better than others. Some people got stuck trying to do it. Other people pulled it off very easily. And then there's the more complex ones that weren't really practical for use in a multiplayer game, but it was still fun to try to get to the locations, like this one in Upheaval, where by standing on these little tight textures, you can actually get on top of this burning building, or even this one back on Airfield where you can get on top of the zombies map and stand on top of the building where no one else can really get to you. But then besides just doing the stuff in player mode, there was actually a really unique experience you could have, and this was something a lot of people who died in Michael Myers games would do if the host put on free spectate mode, but you could actually fly around in free spectate mode and just explore the maps and go out of bounds of the maps. Oddly enough, when Treyarch made this game, they didn't put any restrictions on where and how far out of the map you could go when you are using the spectate mode, like the no clip mode. You can actually see quite a bit of things that you typically wouldn't expect to see when you're looking outside of the map. I just always found this stuff interesting considering how much time I had spent just playing the multiplayer and never really knowing what was beyond, you know, those bushes in the corner or what was off of the cliff on cliffside down at the bottom. It was just kind of a cool thing that was included, and maybe it led to some beliefs or possibilities or speculation as to some other levels or ideas that they had in the game that didn't quite make their way into the final release. And it seemed like every time new DLC came out, I made that my priority to go and fly through the new levels in Spectate Mode just so I could get a better picture or a better idea as to what was maybe hidden away in those levels and what secrets were just kind of behind a, barrier or whatnot. But these definitely were some of my favorite things to do in Call of Duty World at War. And as we always look back at older games like Halo and Call of Duty, it's really cool to get to show some appreciation to one of my favorite Call of Duty games that is definitely underappreciated, though we understand that the other Call of Duty games out there do deserve their praise, of course, and there's some really awesome things that we'll probably look into in the future from other games like COD 4 and Modern Warfare 2. So if you guys have any recommendations of anything specific that you want us to talk about or take a look at, definitely leave it in the comments down below. But hey, if you liked this video, can you take a quick moment first? Double check you are in fact subscribed down below with notifications on. It helps us out a lot. We get to do more stuff like this, and that's cool. Also, if you want to talk with us on Twitter, you can follow me at Rocket Elijah, and you can also follow Luke at Rocket Sloth Luke. So feel free to follow us on there and communicate with us a bit. We would kind of appreciate it. But otherwise, that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you all next time.